Good morning, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest, and today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles. I've done my full playthrough on the channel, and today we're going to be giving you just that little bit of review. Let's go ahead and dig in. So there's a lot to talk about with this game, and I first want to open up just to anybody who is maybe looking for just a original review or a spoiler-free review. This review really going to be designed for people who have played the game before. This was a game that I played, decades ago. It's the game that inspired my channel and some of my love for tactical gaming. So we're going to be going into, the nitty-gritty here. This game's a 9 out of 10. Go buy it, go play it. That's all you need to hear if you are new to this channel. That 1 out of 10 is kind of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the video. Now, I have a couple of sections I want to go through in this video. You can see I got the game pulled up in the background. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is kind of how this game is classified and where it falls in kind of the spectrum of the remake remaster kind of confused genre that's been coming out lately. Specifically, this is called a remaster, but it is a ground up remake because they lost the source code. It feels to me more like a remake in terms of what Square Enix has been releasing in the past. You look at something like the Pixel remasters that were released that, while good, had a lot of problems. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like someone went through the entire game with love, passion, added voice acting. They added, all of these things that like the Japanese version had. They changed the story just a little bit in terms of how it was written. There is a lot of love that's been placed in this game. So when we look at things in the past and we look at like remasters or remakes that have been coming out, a lot of them are hit and miss. And this falls into what I would consider like a good remake. Now, a lot of people are probably going to say, Diggs, it's a remaster. We can get into this argument all day. For me, this is one of the ones that was done right. This falls in that same category as when they released the Zodiac version of Final Fantasy 12 onto the North American side. That was an incredible release. I think about Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 HD Remaster when that came out. It falls into that category where they are really killing it right now. And I hope that we see kind of the trajectory of these types of remakes go forward, or remasters, particularly with some of the older titles. Now, what are the primary differences? Obviously, the primary difference is going to be voice acting, and y'all, it's incredible. Let's just go to Cid, because Cid's the best example. Everybody is going to know Cid's voice actor, Timothy Watson, who is the voice for Oriange in Final Fantasy XIV. Dude, man, kills it.
By all means. Ramza, 'tis a great honor to spend my final days as a soldier in your service.
I'm telling you guys, with the voice acting, this game is completely changed. In just it really makes you suspend disbelief, and it really highlights the story, the passion, how people are feeling. It just changes everything. And it's hard for me to articulate, particularly as we could probably look at like the bad translations in the original version, but the translation is different. The voice acting is different. One of the biggest things that my chat and I were talking about was actually one of the earlier missions where I believe it was the Zelkova Desert or Zelklos Desert, when you are going north of Dorder, I believe, right here. And they are chasing you. You're basically chasing like some bandits into the desert. I believe it's the Corpse Brigade. I could be wrong on this, but they actually refer to it as like a siege, like the siege from Dune. And so you can see like they're taking language from popular sci-fi, which has been like a Final Fantasy tradition, right? You look at something like Biggs and Wedge, right? And they're incorporating that into the design and the conversation and the dialogue in the game is absolutely incredible. And I think very few people will catch on to this unless you've really played like a lot of Final Fantasies and you're really familiar with like the language and the origin of it. I would say we are approaching a point where the authentic translation is really like coming through currently, and it's really just affecting everything from this game. Now, a couple other things we got going here. We do have the charge time changes, which happened in this game. So if you aren't familiar with charge time, most of you should be. When you do play, for example, a job like Archer, when you play Summoner, Black Mage, Time Mage, and White Mage, you run into situations where, you know, your cast would go off and then the enemy would have moved, or, you know, maybe you're playing Summoner and you move one of your units into the zone that the Summoner is hitting. I don't think you could ever do that though, because I don't think your summons hit your units, but you know what I'm saying? Like the type of shit where like your Black Mage is casting and then you fucking walk into it and get hit, right? A lot of the changes to cast time, now that it's a lot faster, is amazing. And for me, I found myself utilizing Archer and their charge ability a lot more. I also found myself utilizing Summoner a lot. Applejack is one of my viewers who's been watching for a really long time, and I ended up using his Summoner so much. It really changed the beginning of the game for me. Of course, you have strategies that always work, right? Like dual wield monk is one that's always going to carry. But especially as we get into tactician mode and these charge time changes, what it's done is it's made other jobs more viable. And for me, in this playthrough, Summoner was more viable for me. I have never used a Summoner really in my Final Fantasy Tactics playthrough. I always would just like jump right to Ninja, right? Or I would jump onto Dragoons or Monks or Knights with dual wield. And I would kind of leave the mages alone for the most part, with the exception to get like teleport from Time Mage. So being able to play through it, particularly on Tactician difficulty, being able to see when the charge time is reflected a lot easier because of the turn order. Granted, you could always do that before, but it's just so much easier now. Along with the cast time reductions, just made Summoner that much better. And I really enjoyed it for the first like 2 chapters of the game. Along with that, the change to Dragoon jumping as well. I don't know if the jump actually changed, because I believe Dragoon's jump is based off CT. So I'm not 100% sure if that changed. It felt like it changed for me, but being able to use Dragoon more reliably and being able to use that jump ability, there were times in this game where, you know, you can see I have Nikki Dio on Dragoon. My level 44 Dragoon with jump, I was taking over Meliadul, over Cloud, over Reese, even over Orlando, believe it or not. There was a battle where, you know, all of a sudden the horizontal progress on a lot of my lower level units was more powerful than Orlando was in my comp. So there's a lot of things that have kind of changed. Particularly, let's talk about Tactician mode. And this is probably going to be where the bulk of my video is, because I did play through the new Tactician mode. And while I do love it, there are definitely some things I don't love about it. Probably the biggest thing is going to be that it does do that thing where it, you know, it might change the enemy AI, but it doesn't. It basically turns enemies more into HP sponges and makes your units take more damage, which is not bad, but it does just, like, it doesn't add that extra layer of fun to it. I feel like there is an opportunity to do more. It does force you to play differently. It does force a number of encounters to play differently, but it also doesn't add that layer of fun that I really wanted. It just caused me to play the game a little bit differently, which was fun. But at the end of the day, I would have preferred something a little bit more creative. And I have some ideas for like what I would have preferred, but I'm curious to hear as well what you guys are thinking. But let's talk about how Tactician mode changed how I play the game. One of the biggest changes I would actually say, compared to every other playthrough that I've gone through, is that Beowulf is a monster. Like, I just gotta say, Beowulf absolutely destroys. Because once you have like Sid not able to one-shot units anymore, once you have units that get one-shot by enemies, depending on what your build is, you really have like not a ton of options for one-shotting or reliably crippling an enemy. Beowulf has that. Beowulf has in his Templar job kit just a ton of abilities, like, for example, Drain. If you're fighting a boss, will drain a huge amount of HP. You have like stone, so like break will just petrify enemies, usually at a 60 to 89% chance. You can see his faith isn't even maxed for me, and he was able to land this pretty reliable. Same with disable. Even something like the chicken ability. I ran into, I was doing the Genji armor, right? So the quest where you have to steal the Genji armor. And I forgot to bring my orator in, right? So someone that can lower bravery so that I can steal more easily from Elmdor, right? Well, come to find out, right? Because I believe it's a 3-battle sequence and that's the second battle. So you're like locked in, right? I could have gone out. There's multiple save files, but like being able to just be like, oh yeah, I have chicken on Beowulf, which is a unit I never really used before, and now I can lower Elmdor's bravery, and it just kind of came together. That was a pretty cool moment. So the tactician mode forcing you to diversify in terms of using units or builds you wouldn't normally build was definitely fun. It just wasn't the same type of fun that I would have through a normal tactics playthrough. A great way to think about this, and I think about this with the Rafa battle, and I wish I had footage of that. You can see it on my VOD if you guys want to go see both Rafa battles where you have to protect Rafa, and there's a couple other battles in the game where you have to protect other units. For those of you that have played Sword of Convallaria, I covered it for a little while in this game, in this chat. One of the reasons I didn't like Sword of Convallaria is because it was a difficult tactical game, but it was difficult in terms of it was almost like a puzzle game, and it wasn't necessarily about horizontal progression or having like fun. It was more about like, hey, you have to solve this puzzle. There's only a few solutions for it, and I feel like there were a couple of missions that became like that when you had to do things like protect Rafa, and it's not the end of the world. I get it. I understand why like that's going to happen, especially when you just like broadly put tactician mode in. I would have liked to see a little bit more diversity, a little bit more fun with like a variety of your units, or to like force you to change your strategies, or to give you a healthy challenge, right? You know, having to protect Rafa and having the only solution be I have to have units at a certain speed that can kill a certain unit within a certain number of turns before Ultima goes off and kills Rafa is not as enjoyable to me as going into, say, Midlight's Deep on the final floor and realizing like, ooh, you know, Nikki Dio on Dragoon's going to be more valuable to me than Sid, right? Like, this is a really cool experience. Like, this is like, you know, this feels really cool. This feels really good. I'm being forced to kind of take a different approach than I would conventionally, as opposed to just solving a puzzle, are things that I really enjoyed, but also hated in this game, right? So I think that's like the biggest drawback of the tactician mode. What I would have liked to have seen is something along the lines of kind of like those monk battles that everybody sees on Reddit, right? Now, y'all have been on Reddit, I'm sure, or you've been on the YouTube shorts and you've seen those battles with all the monks on the hill, right? It would have been awesome if tactician mode just like forced the alternative version of those fights as well, or forced like different styles of battles. Kind of difficult, I know, with some of the story battles, but what if you had like a second unit of knights join the fight for all the important relevant battles, right? What if you had, you know, you have these battles in the story that are pretty gimmicky, right? Or kind of, you know, adjust the difficulty or adjust the style. What if you went hard on that, right? Finally, the kind of last thing I want to talk about here is Final Fantasy Tactics did kind of the same thing it did to me, whether it was in tactician mode or regular mode, where I kind of had to create my own challenge. What I mean by that is they did a lot of things that, like, for example, perfume men can wear now. And there's a lot of situations where you can get like Chantage, which is an item which gives re-raise to the character that has it equipped. So like I could play the game and have all 5 characters with re-raise. Not fun, right? I can get 5 ribbons for all my characters and have them all be status ailment immune, right? So you get to a point in the game where the game becomes much more almost about imposing self challenges as opposed to, you know, actually using everything that the game gives you. And I feel like that's something the original Final Fantasy Tactics did as well. is just more prevalent in this game. You could get all the items and be as overpowered as you wanted to be. I know people who would be fine doing that, and they would say, you know, hey, it's gameplay, it's fine, right? Then you have people like me, where I'm on the final floor of Midlight's Deep. And again, if there's a video to watch from my playthrough, it is going to be that final video, because it definitely highlights kind of how the game like works in terms of challenges. But you have situations where like, hey, I need to change my strategy. I'm going to try using cool new units. Yes, I could put Shantage on all my units and just run Sid and try and clear it. Or I could try and kind of challenge myself, right? Try not to do like dual Excalibur, right? Like you could do like one piece of equipment on each character. So sure, you can have a Shantage. You can't have it on all characters. You know, Shantage probably going to be best on Rafa so that Rafa can get the Chaos Blade and stay alive, right? So you have these situations where you kind of find yourself like self-challenging yourself, and that's one of the things I love the most about tactical games. That's one of the things I love about like XCOM 2, for example, where maybe we'll do a stream XCOM 2 playthrough in the near future where we do Iron Man mode, people die, you kind of create your own stories for those units, you challenge yourself. That's the type of thing that I love, and I'm starting to see that in more with Final Fantasy Tactics here. I just want to see it just that little bit more. Again, that 1 out of 10. Like, great that we got, you know, like speed up during battle. Great that the animations are fixed. Great that we got voice acting, right? I just want that little bit more. And maybe it'll come out in DLC. And I think that's always a sign of incredible game. It's when you're like, just please, a little bit more, like just sprinkle me. Like, you've already given me the remake. You've built everything from the down, you know, from the bottom up. Can we just get a little bit more? Like, Square Enix, you're doing it. You're doing it. Just that little bit more. All right, everybody. Well, it's been a while since I've done a review video. Drop a comment down below. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Talk to you later.